Thanks for listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast. Do remember you can subscribe to Farmers Weekly magazine and get all the latest news, views and market prices by visiting fwi.co.uk.
I'll be honest, I've got bags under my eyes and slightly sleepless nights because I don't know as to whether I'm going to be able to continue working for farmers, and actually all my work will end up doing is laying hedges for rich people who have moved into the area and got 4 or 5 acres of hobby farm and they want a pretty hedge alongside their paddocks.
Could the ancient craft of hedge laying be the latest victim of the sustainable farming incentive closure? We speak to a master craftsman who's been laying hedges for almost 3 decades and has the scars to prove it. We get to grips with grants for farmers, the new Adopt Innovation Fund, and we find out why singing and swearing farmers are all the rage in Oxfordshire. Welcome to the Farmers Weekly podcast. I'm Johann.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh. Broom.
All that and more coming up, but first it's Great British Beef Week, just around the corner, back for its 15th year, shining a spotlight on the dedication of British farmers and the naturally delicious beef they produce. The 23rd to the 30th of April. What better time for the NFU to launch a 10-year vision for the beef sector, setting out the key actions it says are needed to secure a thriving, profitable and sustainable future for the sector. Well, earlier I caught up with NFU Livestock Board Chairman David Barton, himself a Cotswold beef producer, and I asked him why a 10-year vision for the beef sector was needed.
Okay, Johann. Well, it was really born out of the board looking at beef supply and also in particular sucklers. We can see there's been a sort of a steady downturn in numbers of sucklers and also beef supply in the UK. So we thought we need to look at this. And so rather than just sucklers, because they're sort of, they're 60% of the beef on shelf, but we need to look at all the beef supply. So we've looked at the whole thing. And the reason for it is because it's very timely, in fact, because what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a shortening in supply. So, prices are really strong, which is good for us as producers. But what we need to be looking at is what do we need to do here? Because we need to make sure that we need to build on supply and increase it, because we need to make sure that we have enough supply for the processing sector and for the retailers. So the idea of this document is that we bring everybody together, policymakers as well, and farmers. We all need to look at what do we need to do to make sure that we have a thriving beef industry in the UK. I mean, it's worth something like 3.9 billion, so it's very important, and we need to stop that decline, and we need to actually increase production, because we're probably, almost certainly best placed to do that here in the UK.
Yes, supply has dropped back a bit, but for those who are still producing beef, as you say, David, beef is in a good place. It's in a phenomenal place, £7 a kilo after a number of trying years.
Yeah, I think this is why I think it's a really good opportunity and a good time for us as producers to be able to have these conversations with processors and retailers, because the thing is, the way I look at it is there's the three of us and we all need each other, because if we don't produce, there's nothing to process, there's nothing to retail. So it is important, and I think this is our opportunity to say, okay, we need the confidence to continue to produce, because we know with beef, if you're looking at beef sucklers, you're looking at probably you make a change in something, it's 3 years before that comes through. I've just purchased a new bull. I'm not going to see any benefits from that, any cash in the bank for 3 years. So it's a long-term thing, and that's why it's important to have confidence. And confidence has been knocked in the ag industry, as we know. So we need to build that confidence, and this is a great opportunity, a great time to have those conversations and see, be innovative in what can we do to make sure that we get the right signals. And then, of course, government also have a role to play. Confidence is at an all-time low, and a lot of that will be down to inheritance tax, SFI, and all those debacles. So, we need to build confidence, and I think that's key.
Things like inheritance tax, the sustainable farming incentive being closed to new applications, they're affecting the whole of the industry, David. But if you had one ask for the beef sector, one beef-specific recommendation, what would it be to improve confidence?
I think it would be really good if government would, through the new iteration of SFI, whatever that looks like, actually baselines for us, so we can actually baseline our product, and then we can really move on with the sustainability, because we know we've got a fantastic product that is sustainable, and that would be a massive help. So I think government could really help with that, because once we can nail that one, and we can really move forward, that will also help with efficiencies, because as soon as we start to look at our sustainability and improve that, we improve efficiency, and that's what we need to be doing, driving that along. So I think that would be my first ask of them at the moment.
NFU Livestock Board Chairman David Barton. Hugh, you're a beef farmer yourself. You've also been involved in drawing up this vision document with another of your hats on.
With my other hat on, I should disclose that I am the livestock chair for the East for the NFU, and I've been involved. And I'm on the National Livestock Board, as some people may know, and I've been involved with the Livestock Board and my regional board forever. I mean, it's ridiculous. This new 6-year rule on term limits will soon put an end to that in a year or two's time. But we have been involved in it, and it's a good document. It's come out, and it's a wish list really. Of you heard David in the audio there talking. It all came about because there was big discussion back end of last summer, about the suckler decline, which we've seen hugely. And suckler cow numbers in the UK, as listeners will know or may not know, but they've been declining big time, really. It probably started around the time of Brexit, if I'm honest, when the support system was all starting to wobble and people thought, oh, do I still want to be here? Because I'm not going to get that guaranteed payment and I'm not doing too well. I mean, prices dropped. So we've seen it. And then last year we saw suckler numbers go sort of sub 800,000, 700,000 across the UK. So there's been a huge decline there for lots of reasons: retirement, less people coming forward wanting to take over the suckler herd from their forebears, from their parents, and I'll say the support thing. So that has been accelerating and going on and on and on. And of course, now we're in a situation where we see a really high beef price because there is a constraint on supply. So what can we do for sucklers? But then, as I pointed out in the meeting, look, it's all about, we do dairy beef here. We used to do sucklers. And it's about the whole beef thing. It's about what is the plan going forward, what's the wish list from members across the country to optimise their product basically and optimise their beef businesses going forward.
And Louise, as David Barton was saying, this is all about providing some sort of confidence, some certainty, I guess, to a key sector.
Yes, it is. And this is more than just giving the producers confidence as well. It's about including the processors and the retailers in this. And David, made another very good point, actually, that this is a long-term game. That he talked about a 3-year lead time, I think, in terms of making changes and developing his beef enterprise. So we all know, don't we, that confidence is at an all-time low at the moment across most sectors of farming, and beef, despite attracting very good market prices at the moment, it obviously isn't immune from that. So I think to have a 10-year vision for a thriving beef sector is a really good idea, and I'm quite sure that most of the other sectors could do with one of these 10-year visions as well. Of course, the unknown with that then is that we never quite know what the government is going to do or decisions are going to be made. But it's interesting to read that document and see that one of the main headings there is policy framework. So we all know that's a bit of a problem at the moment. We're in a vacuum, aren't we? So I'm sure that that's an area that they will be addressing as well. So yeah, really good to see this. Good luck to them. And, let's hope that the very high beef prices that we have at the moment continue.
Yeah, those prices, record-breaking prices, £7 a kilo, they have come on the back, though, of a number of years in the doldrums. Hugh, do you think producers will be taking the opportunity to reinvest in their businesses, or do you think they'll be taking some of that long overdue profit and having a little bit of fun, as it were?
I don't know. You say a number of trying years. It's probably several decades, Johann, of fairly rubbish returns. Look, I think it's a fantastic thing that the prices are high. Let's not mistake that. And I think for people that have stayed in the suckler game, to suddenly be getting the returns they're getting from their herd is fantastic to see, because, they've had some pretty rubbish years up until that point. But you're absolutely right. It's about I suppose, mending the roof while the sun shines. And I think that's at every level. So whether that's at farmer level in terms of investing to make those businesses more efficient, that could be around, investing in genetics, investing in machinery, investing in infrastructure to try and future-proof it as well as they can. At the farm level, at the market and the processor level, it is a worry. I mean, you mentioned Louise mentioned processors, not just, we've got issues around, say, for example, small abattoirs, but actually big factories will tell you on the quiet that, a bit concerned that the throughput coming through the factory now is nothing like what it was 10 years ago. And if you're running a huge site, you want to optimize the huge amount of capital that's tied up with that and what it costs to run, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going on. I think on the other side of it, it's optimizing stuff around, we talked about the livestock information program. That's taken a long time coming. We're told it's soon to be upon us, but it's many tens of millions of pounds later. But what that can offer the industry overall, what could be done within auction marts in terms of providing more transparency and more buyer information, all of these things need to be looked at. Whilst the money's coming in, this is where the investment should be happening now. And then on the government side, it's bottoming out the framework on things around, the big one, the elephant in the room is the one around emissions. David mentioned about benchmarking and helping farmers to benchmark what their emissions are on their farm, so we can justify. The key thing is being able to justify our position globally as having, just because of the good fortune of where we live, the fact that so much of our beef production is forage based, it means that our kilos of CO2 per kilo of beef produced is considerably lower. It sits at 22 kilos versus a global average of around 34. And I actually genuinely think, and so some dairy systems will be lower than that 22, but I genuinely think that those figures are very much an average of an average. So getting that benchmarking and getting the resolution, the clarity to the data, I think we can actually tell an even better story than what's being told at the moment in terms of our product versus the rest of the world. Despite all the headwinds that are going around trade, about Australia trade deals, the impending US trade deal, what is that going to say? I still think we can tell a better story than all of those put together in terms of how we can deliver product with the least environmental impact. So there's lots in here. There's lots for industry to get hold of, lots for policymakers to get hold of. And I hope it's a really useful document that everyone can get on board with, and it's a plan moving forward. And let's hope it works over the next 10 years.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Have you made plans for your T2 fungicide spray yet? Protecting the flagleaf from yield-robbing septoria and rusts will give your crop the best chance of fulfilling its potential. Year after year, Univoc has delivered robust control of diseases for at least 4 weeks after application. Flexible rates allow you to react to the disease pressure in the crop, and Univoc's lasting activity gives you peace of mind that your investment is secure. Find out more about Univoc, which contains Corteva's unique Innotrek active molecule, at corteva.co.uk/Innotrek.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Now, grants are going to be available for farmers who want to improve their productivity and increase their business resilience. Due to launch on the 28th of April, the £20 million Adopt Fund includes options for farmers to test innovative solutions on their farms. Smaller facilitator grants will pay £2,500 for a farmer, grower or forester based in England to engage the services of an external project facilitator to work up submissions for a full application. The British On-Farm Innovation Network is one of the Adopt programme's approved project facilitators. I spoke to Boffin founder and Oxfordshire farmer Tom Allen Stevens, who's been waiting for the Adopt Fund to launch for some time.
It is really exciting, actually, for farmers. So, as you say, we've been calling about it for quite a while now, for several years. It's part of the Farming Innovation Programme, which is a DEFRA-funded programme. They dedicated 270 million to this program over the agricultural transition. And this is a significant element of it. Has to be said, the amount of funding that they're putting into it is less than what was promised before, about half as much as before. But, in the light of the government spending review and so on, at least it's something. And this is definitely farmer-led. And that's the really important thing about this, that farmers have to lead these projects. And there's going to be a lot of support for farmers who want to do this. Anyone who's been involved in research, especially Innovate UK funded research as this is, will know that it can be very, very bureaucratic and difficult to get on with. But all of that is handled by you have to take on a project facilitator to make sure that you're meeting your milestones and to make sure that everything's being accounted for properly and so on. And the project facilitator handles all of that element for you. So you can just get on with the research and the particular idea that you want to develop, or the piece of kit or whatever that you want to develop on your farm. That's the important thing.
So this isn't about corporate investment then so much as ideas, brilliant ideas that farmers have on the farm, making those ideas, turning them into reality. And we know that farmers can have brilliant ideas. We know from the Farmers Weekly Farm Invention Competition, for example. But this is very, very much farmer-led, Tom.
Absolutely. And this is the key about this. It is definitely farmer-led. These are ideas that have to be led from the farm. So, it could be, for example, developing a new piece of kit to do relay cropping, or it could be developing a tool to look at arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi in your soils and actually measure it. It could be, how to look at the effect of introducing lucerne into your rotation and how deep is it going and things like that. Getting some really good scientific data from it. So you'd be working with scientists, you'd be working with tech innovators as well, but it's your choice as to who you work with, what tech you choose. You don't have to choose any tech. It could just be knowledge. It could be group knowledge as well. You could get together a group of farmers to do trials in different systems on a particular thing, and you'll be rewarded for that in terms of your time and investment and the resources that you put into it. That's quite an important part of this, by the way, Johann. That there is the way these are funded is that you would put in your costs for doing it, which would include your time and the resources that you dedicate to it. And a DEFRA would pay you 80% of those costs. If you look back at the 50 to 100,000 of the project size, at least half of that must be spent on farmers involved in the project. So that's quite a considerable amount to dedicate to a research project. And this comes back to the flair of British farmers to do this kind of work. And it's been ignored in the past, but there are some really skilled farmers out there who are, enthusiastically pursue new tech and new ideas and so on. And this plays to their strengths. This is a really good opportunity for British farmers to be involved in this.
That's Tom Allen-Stevens from Boffin, the British On-Farm Innovation Network. Louise, as Tom was saying in the audio, this Adopt Fund, this confirmation that it's going to open 28th of April, this has been a long time coming.
Oh yes, it has been. It was first mentioned, a long time ago, wasn't it? And I think the other thing that Tom highlighted quite nicely as well is that when it was first mentioned, there was a lot more money in the fund than there is now. But technology on the farm is usually a good thing. So anything that is going to support that investment and that help has to be welcomed, doesn't it?
I thought it was interesting that the fund there are two strands to it. There's this, there are the full applications, but also what will be of interest to a lot of farmers is the facilitator aspect of it. This sort of £2,500 for a farmer with an idea to be able to work up an initial application to see whether it's worth going on to make a full application.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, I think, isn't it? And we've already seen some of these facilitators, raising their heads above the parapets and saying, "Yeah, here I am. I'm going to be one of these, and I'll be able to help you with a project that you may have in mind." And that's a very good idea, isn't it? Because farmers, as we all know, get very busy at certain times of year. So having somebody to do all that side of things is great, I think. Of course, what most farmers need now is the sort of technology or innovation that helps them make these changes to the farm practices, but actually allows them to still maintain performance, because we've all seen technology come and go at the farm level, and it's usually about return on investment as far as the farmer is concerned. So let's hope that these facilitators can really help draw out what are going to be really good projects, what are going to be successful for getting the funding as well, because this is going to be competitive, I'm sure. So we do need to know that if you're putting a lot of effort in, that you're likely to be successful.
Hugh, does this Adopt Fund appeal to you at all as a farmer?
So, does it appeal? Possibly. I've been involved in one of these projects, and there is a lot of red tape, although I haven't, their facilitator team did it, and they had to put a whole sort of framework of people in place to do all the red tape and all the lifting and all of the stuff like that. And there's quite a lot of that involved, as you can imagine, and it's government driven. That's fair enough. You've got to be accountable. So there's a lot of red tape. So a facilitator is welcome. They're quite slow, these things as well. I think when you talk about return on capital, it's quite small. The amount the government puts out across all sectors in terms of what they get back, it's less than 10% in terms of the numbers of projects that actually get to some sort of commercial viability, sustainability, and actually make a success. But you're doomed if you don't, and you're doomed if you do. So government's got to do it because they're trying to encourage some innovation. I think, to be fair, some farmers would look at this and go, yeah, that's great, and it will suit some, particularly if you're a very well-established farm business with a big business framework. I'm thinking like, a massive fresh produce company or something like that, where you've got a whole load of infrastructure that can help to handle this, and it can sit there and tick away. For the smaller standalone farmer, it's probably less appealing because of what's involved. And actually, a lot of this research can also be done. You get private partners involved and commercial partners involved, and it can be done. A lot of it's also done like that. Let's not forget that. A heck of a lot of research is done like that. But look, it's welcome. Shame that they've cut the budget, but then they were bound to, because they're cutting all the budgets. But yeah, good luck to anyone that gets involved, and let's hope we see some amazing ideas and some amazing commercial successes coming out the end of it.
Yeah, very important aspect of this Adopt Fund is that it's very much farmer-led, Louise.
Yeah, if you think about it, actually, the whole regenerative farming movement was farmer-led. When that started out, there was absolutely no one doing trials or testing technology. So that very much started on the farm, and they all learnt from each other. I mean, many of them will tell you that they made it up as they went along, whether that was with, having to alter a drill or learn about cover crops or whatever. So, there are really good examples of where farmer-led work has moved on to something, much bigger. So it'll be interesting to see which projects they do pick out and they do fund, because, that's just one example of where, there was no work being done anywhere else, and they just had to do it for themselves.
Yeah, the farmers have always been innovative, haven't they? I mean, you're absolutely right. The whole regen example you used is a perfect example where farmers are determined. That goes right back to, grassland societies in the 1940s and 50s being established to get the best out of grass production, which was hugely successful at the time and completely changed the way that we farm grass and that we make silage and all of that stuff. So it's been happening for years. The other thing to bear in mind as well, this isn't for everyone, and I'll tell you why it's not for everyone, because of commercial sensitivity. Because if you go for one of these grants, and they will be fantastically useful to some people, if what you're trying to do is commercially really sensitive, you will be really nervous about getting it publicly backed, because it changes all of the sort of, effectively where you have to publish what you're doing, you have to have open days and invite people, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of people that will be doing, if it's really good research, they'll just be getting on and doing it themselves because they know it's going to work. But look, it's welcome, and let's hope some good comes out of it.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
Transition Live on Thursday the 8th of May at the University of Leeds Farm. Tickets are available now. Simply search online Farmers Weekly Transition Live.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
You're listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast. Welcome along wherever you're listening to us from. You can email us, podcast@fwi.co.uk. And if you're in the UK itself, you can message us by texting the word farm, followed by your message to 88440. Louise, as always, start with you. Messages this week.
Well, I've had some feedback this week, and it all relates to the yellow rust item that we did on the podcast last week. People generally seem to be very pleased to have been alerted to what is an unusual situation, as we pointed out. That's the sort of information that they need going forward. There does seem to be something geographical going on, which we did mention on the podcast last week. But generally, more yellow rust is being found. So they were really pleased to hear that item and understand more about what's going on.
Always good to be appreciated. Thank you very much for that, Louise. Good to know that people do find listening to the Farmers Weekly podcast useful more often than not, hopefully. Hugh, some other news this week. Personal imports of meat and dairy products banned because of foot-and-mouth fears.
Yeah, the government announced this week that it's banned the bringing in of dairy and meat products from the EU because of the foot and mouth risk, which is something that the industry has been calling for a long time. You'll remember at the NFU conference back in February, Steve Reed, DEFRA Secretary, stood up and made some very sort of stern remarks around protecting biosecurity, particularly around ASF and foot and mouth. So this meat ban, whilst it's welcome, I think the one question is how or where are the resources, or will there be the subsequent resources to help bolster the efforts of Border Force staff? So, I think back in January I know in October last year there was 15 tonnes of this illegal meat seized at Dover. I think there was 10 tonnes in January. The list goes on. And those guys are sort of doing okay, but they need more resource to be able to, and particularly on the western ports. I think for the aircraft side, it's probably I don't know whether it's easier because all the baggage is X-rayed, so you can see stuff that's in there. But then it begs the question, will they have trained the people reading the X-rays to look out for, bits of cheese and ham in suitcases coming back into Gatwick or wherever? It's a really welcome thing. NFU Cymru, the Welsh part of the NFU, their livestock chair, and sent a letter to the minister welcoming the ban, or they were talking about, actually it was before the ban was announced, but they reiterated the point saying, this is great, but it needs the resources at the border to be able to implement it, because it's quite cheap and easy. Well, it's not cheap, I'm sure you have to change various things, but it's relatively straightforward to change the rule, but it's something else to actually invest in enforcing it, isn't it? It's a whole different level again.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's going to take more than a few posters being put up at Heathrow, Stansted or Luton airports. You've got to actually police this kind of thing. Otherwise, people just aren't going to take it seriously, Louise.
Well, I hope they are going to take it seriously, but you're right, there's always a risk that they won't. But it's been interesting to me that it's been picked up by all the national media. So good timing, I think, with people, Easter holidays at the moment, isn't it? So some people will have travelled abroad. It's really has highlighted it to the general public by the national media picking it up. We all know what the threat is and what the fears are, but, there has been some coverage of it, so hopefully people will obey.
Yeah, let's hope they do. Although someone said the other day, yesterday, coming back through Eurotunnel, absolutely no sign of it anywhere. So if you were immune to news outlets and nothing being said, nothing being shown. So I don't know, there's perhaps a bit of work to be done on the actual coalface to make sure people are aware of the ban.
Some other news in the headlines, Louise, vertical farms.
Yes, unfortunately, one of the big vertical farms, I think this one was in Gloucestershire, has gone into administration. It's not the first of this type of enterprise to struggle, and it probably won't be the last. So I think what we're seeing here is that it's much easier to raise the funding for the technology on the promise that you're going to save the planet than it is to raise the next lot of funding that you then need for when you're actually producing a product and trying to sell it into the market. So there are some, as we all know, harsh commercial realities of the produce industry, and they just seem to be struggling with that and just not making any money at all.
Hugh, we talked about the Adopt Fund earlier. This just shows the challenges of starting something new, getting investment and making things work.
Yeah, it does. And it also shows that how you can, we talked about this when we were talking about lab-based meat the other week, how you can get investors. If you tell them it's going to save the planet, boom, they're there like a shot. Talk to normal high street banks about investing in agriculture and they run a mile at the moment because they're utterly paranoid about scope 3 and emissions. And it begs the question, doesn't it, that if you're going to spend all these millions on vertical farms that then fail because they're not commercially sound and they can't stand up to energy price spikes, they're not properly thought through, they're not properly executed, then why aren't you investing in farming systems that we do know that works? And actually, more's the point as well, it's the other reason why the farming systems that are currently in existence, and we touched on this earlier with the beef thing, you've got to account for what you're doing. Because actually, if you can tell a really good story based on data about how well you're farming and what you're producing, then surely that's as good as someone coming to you telling you they're going to save the world by stacking cress 32 stories high on a square metre in the middle of central London, which then fails because it doesn't work. So it does beg the question, right money, right place. Some banks are doing it, many aren't at the moment.
Now, if you are looking to earn a little bit of money, a little bit of extra money, Louise, singing farmers can earn up to £1,500 for, just a little bit of light work in Oxfordshire, it seems.
It does, doesn't it? So there's a lager commercial being filmed in Oxfordshire. It's on May the 12th, and they are looking for real farmers, also farming industry folk, they say, who are strong singers because they're going to form a choir and record them for this lager commercial. So actually, there are two different roles on offer here. So the first one, you must have some singing or choir experience or a very strong voice. And to do that, you'll get paid over £1,500 to turn up on May the 12th and do that. But they're also looking for, 30 or so farm workers to be extras on the shoot day as well. So they won't get quite so much money. They get £200 for the day, but they don't need to have quite the same singing talents as the first group, but they need to be prepared to give it a go, it says. So the only other condition that we can see applies to it is that they must be 25 years or older, because obviously it is an alcohol brand that they're promoting. So the company that they need to get in touch with is called Raw Research, and then you can go for your audition and see what your voice is like.
That's not the only condition, being over 25 and having a bit or being able to hold a tune. You've also have to be able to put up with a little bit of light swearing. It says, look, Hugh, I'm hearing lager, Oxfordshire, a bit of light swearing. This has got to be something to do with Jeremy Clarkson and Hawkston lager. If it isn't, it's probably somebody else, another lager company, parking their tanks on Clarkson's lawn. What do you think?
I don't know. It's a good PR ruse, isn't it? The use of the term light swearing. It's there's lots of other, who knows? But yeah, I certainly won't be applying for it because I can't sing that well. Even if you charge me with lots of lager, it still wouldn't sound that well. So I'll pass on, but I'll leave you to do this one.
Yeah, singing for your supper, quite literally. Are there easier ways to make any money? Let's find out. Hugh, the markets, what's happening?
Thank you, Johann. The Finnish steer deadweight this week, 697.1, so that's up another 7p this week. The live weight goes up by one penny, basically, 391.5, the live weight steer average for the UK. Sheep markets, the deadweight SQQ this week, 710.4, so that's back about 14p on the week. The live weight is 329.3, that is back about 5 on the week. Pig price this week changes virtually. It goes up all of 0.01 of a penny to 204.9, the SPP this week, deadweight pence per kilo. To the arable markets, and it's a bit of a steady old picture, really. Feed wheat, 169.20. That has gone down by 10p a tonne. Milling wheat, £188.50. That goes up by about £3. Feed barley goes up £2 to 156.40. Oilseed rapeseed to be continuing an upward trend, £458.10 this week, up from 441.10 last week. Feed peas stand on at 216.7. Feed beans stand on at 217.1. And if you are filling tractors up with diesel this week, it should cost you around 63.45 pence per litre. That has dropped back again, as world demand for oil seems to be absolutely slumping at the moment because of all that's going on. 63.45 this week, down 3p on the week, red diesel.
The Farmers Weekly Podcast.
And finally, everyone, they say, has at least one book inside them trying to get out, and that includes an increasing number of farmers and country folk. The latest book coming to a bookshop near you is Words from the Hedge, a hedgelayer's view of the countryside. Written by Suffolk hedgelayer Richard Negus, it's a passionate book about the history, beauty and importance of our hedgerows by a craftsman who's been laying hedges for almost 3 decades and has the scars to prove it. Well, we're lucky enough to have Richard on the line now. Richard, hedges seem to me to be one of those things that we often take for granted, and yet the more you know about them, the more you get to know about them, the more interesting they are.
Yes, I think the hedge is a forgotten thing. People write lots of poetry about trees and woods and stuff like that, but very few people wax lyrically about hedges, because I think they're just part and parcel of our landscape, I suppose, and therefore they're overlooked.
Richard, hedges seem to be having their moment when the Sustainable Farming Incentive suddenly included actions for managing them and establishing them. And similarly, also, of course, we had capital grant payments to support them. Do you worry that that's all under threat now? What's going to happen from here?
Well, I am extremely worried, Louise. I actually helped. Janet Hughes was very clever when she was developing elms. You know, she went out and she did a lot of farmer engagement. And I was quite vocal in saying, well, we need to have this, we need to have that, we need to have the other. And so a very clever way of silencing my criticism publicly was to go and say, all right, then, smart ass, you come and help me do this. And so some of the bits of the wording in the hedgerows and boundaries prescriptions is my own hand, because they're things that I say, well, I need to do as a practical hedge layer, and I need them to work. And like a lot of things with the SFI, they were farmer-led and they were practical and they work for us. And the removal of the SFI, no clear indication it's going to come back, and even the rather cynical freezing this year of the capital works grants during, funnily enough, the middle of the hedging season, you know, when farmers are trying to go and get that all sorted and ready to rock and roll, I think probably indicates that the direction of travel, I think, is not going to be the care and management of existing features like hedges, hedgerow trees. So we'll lose things like the BN5 and BN10 grants, the gapping up grants. We're going to lose the pollarding trees, raising canopies, all those things that I think they're probably going to be either removed, or they're going to be, certainly the available grant budget will be dropped. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see an increased budget for the BN11, i.e. the planting new hedgerows, because there seems to be some fixation in this government, and to be fair, the last, is that somehow planting new is better than managing what you already have. So yes, I'll be honest, I've got bags under my eyes and slightly sleepless nights, because I don't know as to whether I'm going to be able to continue working for farmers, and actually all my work will end up doing is laying hedges for rich people who have moved into the area and got 4 or 5 acres of hobby farm, and they want a pretty hedge alongside their paddocks.
Richard, I was going to say exactly that, because I've done on my farm here in Surrey, and I'm amazed you've got as many hedges to talk about in East Anglia. I thought we had the most in Surrey, but that's just me being cheeky. We have done thousands of metres of new hedge. We've laid thousands of metres. We've coppiced and restored lots of hedges. At one stage, we had the most laid hedges on any farm in the south of England when they did some competitions here. But that grant going, and having done it, loads of it myself, it's just going to kill the job, isn't it? I mean, it's literally going to be the film stars and the very rich that are paying you, because commercially a metre, it's over 10 quid, and I think the payment was around 10 quid, wasn't it? So it's going to stall it dead.
Utterly. I mean, do you know, when I first set my business up, one of the hardest tasks I had was convincing farmers that this was beneficial to them and it wasn't going to cost them a king's ransom. And always I took away the financial burden, because I said, all you're going to do, I'm going to lay your hedge for you using the grant price, and this is what we'll charge you. And all you've got to do is, I'm going to invoice you, and in 14 days' time, I'd like to see a payment in my account. All you've got to wait is for the vagaries of the RPA to pay you. And so therefore the financial burden of hedge laying was taken away. And unfortunately, you are, most of the time, especially in arable, settings, you've got so few people working on the farm now. I mean, it's quite normal here that you'll have one person working 1,000 acres, and the only time extra staff comes in is at harvest. So therefore, you're having to outsource you're going to have to outsource that work to others. But, we charge the grant rate, whether we're conservation laying a hedge, so therefore we crook a hedge down lower, or whether we're staking and binding one, we add the BN5 and the BN10 grants together, so you get that for staking and binding. If I'm not going to stake and bind it, I don't charge the farmer that, and we don't have to go and, they don't have to claim that piece of the grant. With it going, I think exactly as you say, I can only see that it's the hobbyists, it's the film stars and the rich types who are going to be able to go in, and they're not actually getting their hedges laid necessarily because they think of the conservation benefits. It's because it looks quaint and they saw it on Clarkson's farm, or they think they want those laid pleachers perfect, and they're going to want a competition standard laid hedge along their garden, which is fine. But we'll have to put up our rates, because our rate of advance will be such that we can't get over it and do the job and then get on to the next. I mean, it seems so daft. It seems that we've run up to the top of the hill, we're nearly there, and then these decisions made in the last few weeks and the ones back immediately after the budget have just combined to quite literally, it's almost like it was designed specifically with me in mind to give me a really bad day.
Where can our listeners get hold of a copy of your book? When is it out, and where do they get it from?
It's published on May the 1st and by a publisher called Unbound. And if you go on unbound.com and just type in Words from the Hedge, that will come up. But do you know what I'd really like to do? I'd love to see people go into their local bookshop, because I'm going on a ridiculous scale tour. So you asked me what I'm going to do this summer. Well, I'm going on a book tour, which is really fancy, isn't it? So I'm going all over the place. But one of the other things I'm doing, as well as going to smart places and literary festivals and comedy festivals, I'm even going to the Exeter Comedy Festival, where I'm going to be interviewed by a man dressed as a hedge. But I'm going to try and go to every single independent bookshop in Suffolk and Norfolk in this thing, because I think they're a bit like a lot of us in farming, where APR is hitting them. Well, a lot of these guys, they're getting hit by massive, suddenly new hikes in business rates. Their BPR hits a lot of these people. There's so many things. And I thought, well, little guys like us, we ought to stick together. So I'm going off, free of charge, I hasten to add, going off and talking at numerous bookshops around and about the counties, just obviously talking about my book, but also I'm a bit of an evangelist when it comes to hedgerows, so possibly, hopefully, saying a few things that people didn't know, but also, very importantly, flogging the book, because I do need to eat.
And Richard, when you say you're going to be interviewed by a man dressed as a hedge, is that you dressed as a hedge, the man dressed as a hedge, or is it both of you?
No, I'm not being dressed as a hedge. I think I'm just going to be wearing. They probably won't be dressed in a carter's smock, because it seems to be that all hedge layers these days, if they're ever sort of anywhere, that they've got to go, all right, me liver, and go and dress up like in some random old clothes. I don't do that, but. No, this is a guy called Will Adamsdale, who is quite a famous actor, and he now does loads of these comedy things. He was in quite big films back in the noughties, and anyway, he runs the Exeter Comedy Festival, and he approached me and said, I do a comedy skit where I dress up as a hedge. He goes, I'd really like to have you on, and I'm going to be interviewing you dressed as a hedge. I went, righto, okay, if that's the way it goes, then on it is.
That's Richard Negus, professional hedge layer, conservationist and author. That book again, Words from the Hedge, a hedge layer's view of the countryside, published on May the 1st from all good bookshops and unbound.com. And that's about it for this episode of the Farmers Weekly podcast. We'll be back next week with some more news, views and analysis of everything that's great and good about UK farming. For now though, please do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and if you really like what you hear, do leave us a 5-star review. Until next week though, I'm Johann Tasker.
I'm Louise Impey.
And I'm Hugh Broom.
Thank you for listening.